So when I began my journey, at least going back to school in the organizational leadership program last fall, 2020-21, I really thought I had a pretty good grasp of who I was as a leader. I thought, I've got at least the cliched elements down. Um, Strong, in control, some of those traits that people look at and say, well, that's what a leader needs to do. And as I delved into issues in organizational leadership, I started to realize that there's a whole lot of stuff that I wasn't taking into account just in my general personal approach to leadership, especially some of the cultural context. Um, just individuals, people living in the same neighborhood, regardless of their backgrounds, what they do for a living, where they come from, each person is in itself, you know, a culture. And so that collective of experiences that makes an individual is what influences them on a daily basis. And leading yourself to a greater understanding of that, especially inside of an organizational context where so many individuals have so many different backgrounds, come from different places, ideas. You could have people that come from the same state, same city, same county, same school, identical backgrounds, graduated from the same class. They have totally different concepts of what makes them who they are. So when you put people together, even though they share a very homogenous background, it's important to understand that it's still individual. And all the things that you do or all the decisions you make have to incorporate all those factors. And in data driven decision making, it sort of reinforced that there's a reality that can be expressed with math, but it's not necessarily perfect, because if we don't ask the right questions or if we don't frame the experiment or the model right, then we ultimately wind up with answers that aren't necessarily correct. They're correct according to the math as we've set the situation up, but the situation didn't really match what we were trying to measure or trying to control for. So the data is real, but if we didn't collect it right, or if we had some sort of influence that we didn't foresee on the data, then what we're looking at and what we're trying to figure out, it's not necessarily going in a real direction. It's a reality, but it's not necessarily the reality that we were trying to chase down and understand. And so, in behavior, ethics, and leadership, I think I never really expected to see as much in terms of that numeric reality, um, a sense of justice from 2 plus 2 is 4, therefore it can't be 12, or it can't be 2 plus 2 equals 4 in this situation, and then over here in this situation we want it to be 5. So um, metrics, I wouldn't have really thought had anything to do with philosophy, justice, ethics. Human behavior. Yeah, you look at that and you go, well, we use statistical models to understand not just the reality we live in, but people's actions and behaviors, trends, and so forth. But it was just really a big eye opener for me to understand that metrics can go places and not just not just create an optimal outcome, but a just outcome. And so when we negotiate, we accommodate people, we have to do it with actions that metrics hold up. And in leadership theory, I really started to understand the views and perspectives of leadership from the situational and contingent models. And that's where it kind of started to come together for me, and realize that, you can change the situation, you can change the people in the situation, you can do a little bit of both. And as we manipulate one or the other, or both sometimes, you could have two schools of thought in either direction. The contingent theory being that particular leaders are going to be more particularly effective in individual situations, whereas the situational model really backs up or espouses the idea that it's up to the leader to choose behaviors, ideas, actions, and those particular choices and what they do is what influences the situation and creates the outcomes. It's not necessarily that one particular human being will always tend towards one type of behavior and that they're just not capable of doing something else. It's just that for the most part, when we look back at issues in organizational leadership, understand that as a result of just the human experience, we're all just tending to the wounds that we have, and the responses that we come up with are just human nature in terms of how we deal with problems and approach situations. And our tendencies, they're always going to be there, but to some degree they're controllable, and we can choose to do something else. So in Capstone, that's where I really started to cement the idea that as a leader, I don't necessarily have to do the same thing in every situation, every time. The people that follow me don't necessarily have to respond to my behaviors, decision making the same way every time. It can be contingent or it could be situational. And I have to be pretty open to the concept that it's a combination of things. And my mood today and how it mixes with a particular member of the team at a particular time of year. I mean, there's just so many different factors that go into things that we just almost can't be committed to one specific approach and say, well, this worked and we're just going to keep on making it work. And we have to be really open-minded and look for optimal outcomes, even in the smallest of situations. And I guess that's part of where my new leadership philosophy now is adapted from what used to be ownership to just at fault. And by that I mean I'm ultimately responsible. I'm not just responsible for me, but I'm responsible for the situation that my behavior, my decisions influence. And so if I'm not having a good day and I'm not capable of handling myself that day, I'm going to influence the situation in a direction that perhaps none of us want it to go. And so even though those external causes may be there, somebody else is being a problem, it's up to me to control my response and not just set an example for how to control and what to do, but to also mitigate the external factors that may be causing problems. So effective leadership is kind of it's capable of not just overcoming itself as a result of, the human existence and being better than itself, but it's also capable of bettering those around it. So I don't feel like I'm a good leader if I'm not helping those around me be better. I need to leave leaders in my wake. If I leave where I'm at and it falls apart without me, that is not a testament to who I am as a leader. It might be a testament to who I am as a worker, really productive guy capable of covering for other people. But I did not influence, inspire, or motivate the people that I left behind to do better and make a better situation. And I think that's what highly effective leadership does. And where I go from here, I think, is not just to create that, to have people that are followers that decide that they're going to be as motivated and committed as I am, but also to be that person that's kind of the go-to for everything. Not necessarily a controlling, owning person or somebody that nobody can live without, but that person that people choose to involve, that people choose to go to and say, hey, I'm having kind of a little bit of trouble here. Can you help me? And maybe it's not always about work. Sometimes it could be about, I've got this thing at home. What do I do? And so I think when I look back on the people I look at as the best leaders in my experience, I could have talked to them about anything. They were on my side, and I knew that no matter what I told them, I was safe. That no matter what the situation was, it wasn't anything they couldn't handle, and it wasn't, even if it really wasn't anything they'd ever heard of before, they weren't going to let me think that this was something that was capable of either ending my job or causing a problem that we couldn't solve. So I always felt really safe telling those people what they needed to hear. And so I think for me and going forward, I want to be that person that everybody looks at and goes, this stuff ain't going right. We better go get him. Or it's going good. Make sure he knows. Just because, they want to talk to you. They want to include you. They want you there. And sure, they would hate it if you left. But they wouldn't try to do anything to throw a wrench into anything that you had going on, wreck your plans just to keep you around for their own selfish purposes, because they care for you enough that they want you to do as well as anything. So I think ultimately that goal of creating relationships that are not just productive for the organizational goals and in the present and in the future, but develop the kind of relationships that last a lifetime.